Any preference?
Okay, we're gonna close the day. I am
Yeah.
lucky enough to have Sharif from Nestlé. I've got Samir from Meta. I've got Felix from Synthesia, and I've got Joel from Softcat. How good is that memory? So obviously, panel discussions are not in any way a competition, but Bruno has promised me the best speaker will receive 2 weeks full expenses paid in Disney. So not really. We're gonna start with the obvious question, but I think most importantly, we want to keep it open. We want to keep it relaxed. We want to enjoy ourselves because it's the end of the day. So I'm going to throw them some questions, but don't let me do all the speaking. If you have a question you want to throw these guys, stick your hand up. I will spot you. We will send a microphone your way. To start with, it's been a great day. Have you had fun?
I did.
Yes. Great.
Yeah, 100%.
A key takeaway from each of you, if that's possible? What's the one thing you're taking away from today?
Well, I can start, and I wouldn't refer to a specific session, but all of the sessions had more or less a common element, which is AI. So again, it is the hot topic. It is what most of the conversations were about. So it's very challenging, especially for people my generation as well. I don't know how many changes we had to cope with, but definitely AI is one of the biggest ones. So all the messages that were around that field were some of my key takeaways for the day.
Thank you.
I think the best thing is this session. We are ending the day. The entire day, as you rightly said, we did so much about AI. I kickstarted with how AI can help in measurement. And right now, I'm in a panel where we are going to justify how human is required. So I didn't have a mid-conference existential crisis. It's more about we should have human in the mix of things. So that's a key takeaway.
Thank you.
I think for me, understanding that most of us in here are learning and development professionals, and it's lovely to see everybody in that regard. And I think, AI has been a common theme from the discussions, but understanding the human element behind it. And I think what you've just spoken about as well, in terms of understanding that whatever we are thinking about doing from a technological perspective, we then have that human interaction. And that's where it's resonated with me in terms of saying that, our jobs are not going to be redundant in the next 10 years due to AI. It's about how do we utilize it to the best of our ability, because we have the drivers behind it.
Yeah, awesome. I think as the person from the AI vendor side of things, I'm actually like really pleased how much the conversation on the L&D side is on the human side. Because it very quickly, and honestly, it probably comes to this at a later point again, like it very quickly goes into ROI, KPIs and all of that. And I think it's incredible to see like just the level of passion and like, interest in like really having progression in that. So like, that was a huge takeaway for me.
And if there was one skill, one human capability you could equip every single person on your team with, what would that one skill be? And I don't mind who answers that first.
I can start. I would say, because in the morning, we have discussed a lot about AI judging the tone in the measurement piece, simulations and all. But to answer your question, I would say contextual judgment, because AI can judge the tone. They don't know the context. Say, for example, there's a classic example. We are all humans. We are attending a conference by humans, thank God. And we are here. We are reading the room. We are reading the tone. AI can actually, even if we do simulations, can say the tone is rude, but based on an angry customer, quote unquote, AI can't say whether the resolution would be a discount, escalation, or things like that. So context matters.
So that building of self-awareness, that right. ability to read the room.
Yeah. So contextual judgment.
Yeah, brilliant.
I think what you spoke about earlier was something that resonated with me, was about storytelling. I would love all my teams to really have the element of storytelling. Tell that story behind the purpose of what you're aiming to deliver. So I think, AI they haven't got that capability of setting the scene. And I would love that capability for my teams to really set the scene by telling a story, thinking about what has been resonated in their life, in their story, in their career, and actually how they're able to really land that learning or that initiative that we're trying to build. And I think that storytelling element is something that I really resonate with, and I hope that all the teams would still have that capability.
Brilliant. Obviously, we're singing from the same hymn sheet on that one. Thank you,
Yes.
Joel.
I just want to double down on the judgment piece. And I think what we have to keep in mind about the judgment piece as well is like that also requires deliberate training to ensure that, you know, people are being given a chance to actually like have the judgment versus like just assuming that judgment is being like put in place. But yeah, I totally agree.
Sharif.
And from my side, I would say curiosity.
Mm.
So basically, AI is there, but it's not able to provide you with solutions or with answers without that element of curiosity. So you need to be curious enough to ask the right questions, to go beyond with your thinking so that you can get the best out of AI.
And I'm going to flip that. So if there was any aspect or area you could then train all of your employees an AI tool or an AI capability to get them really confident on, what would that look like?
I would say in addition to curiosity, there are a couple of other elements like prompting, of course. But again, I would go back to your point and say critical thinking. And that is very important because that forms a barrier to many people to work with AI because they are afraid. What if the results are not accurate? How would I look like? So again, that element of critical thinking. And by the way, that's not a new concept. I remember when I was a child, my father was a mathematics teacher. And the first time I started using a calculator, my father told me, don't ever rely only on calculators. He didn't say the word critical thinking as it was, but he told me, use your mind. Count how many digits are there in the outcome. Look at the last digit. Does it make sense that it is the outcome of the multiplication of these two big numbers or not? So again, you know, like all through the developments, we have been using critical thinking. It's not a new skill. We used it with calculators, we used it with Excel sheets, and now we should also be using it with AI as well.
It feels like the conclusion we're all coming to is when we blend these two things together really well, we become unstoppable. Super nice.
Yep. Plus one to that, I'll say prompting while thinking. It's interesting because often when you say prompting, people think about prompt engineering. We don't want us to be best prompt engineers. Of course, it's a good skill to have, but it's more about when you're prompting with all these AI tools. Let's flip it that way, thinking. Are you articulating it correctly? Because oftentimes we just give a prompt or any LLM tool, create a presentation of this without any task, context, audience. So they can create a presentation, but again, are you articulating it well? But that's a common problem as a human, isn't it? Like as long as we can articulate well, that's a great skill set to have in this AI world.
So it almost feels like you need to go back to the human skill,
That's
get better
right.
at the AI skill. Yeah, I
Yeah.
love that. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I think I resonate with that. And I think more or less giving your teams that empowerment to see it as a partner, if you will, to ensure that, you know, sometimes we ask questions and we're thinking, oh, should I ask that question? Is that the right question to ask? So you go to AI first. And I think that would be something that just get that prompt, to have that business partnering aspect, to understand that, okay, yes, it may be a dumb question to the masses, even though no question is dumb. I'm just saying in terms of how you may feel internally, because the fear of, you know, moving forward with certain things, asking AI to help you with that, just to build that confidence, would be a way to really train others to use it as a business partner and to say, okay, am I just kind of confirming my ideas? Is that my thoughts? Is it right that I'm thinking like this? And, you know, having that critical thinking piece as well, to just have that business partnering for even in life. Because I think even when we first started using ChatGPT, it was quite scary if everybody started using it and, you know, asking certain questions. But you know, now it's really a driver for them to start thinking about, actually, what if this is an idea that I've had? Let me go to ChatGPT, let me ask those questions. And then they've obviously confirmed it, or maybe said, oh, you know, think of it from this perspective. And before speaking to somebody else from a human perspective, you've had that confirmation for yourself. And I think it's more of that kind of Dear Diary. If you remember when you had to write in your diary, you know, this is what happened. I would say that AI is that diary, if you will, to really partner and make sure that you've got your ducks in a row or anything like that. But I think it's just helping you to transform that idea and make it into reality.
I can definitely relate to that. All of my questions that I feel are too stupid to ask an actual human, straight into ChatGPT, and I get an answer. And ChatGPT often says, that's not a stupid question. And I feel better about myself. Phoenix.
Yeah, very, very reaffirming. what I see like that partners or businesses approach us and say like, I'm frustrated because I put in a prompt and like the output isn't 100% perfect. I think the understanding that this has to be an iterative approach as well. And prompting is exactly right. But it's like you work with a colleague, like everything within businesses is like, you continue to improve it as you go, right? And you get an output and you question it, you continue to work on it. And like, then you come to the result that you actually want to achieve. And then that requires the human input as well. So I think like that iterative piece is really important.
So I think, again, these skills just do work really nicely when they work together. Fantastic. It feels like at the moment, every single product, every single service, every single conference I attend has to have the word AI in it. It is really the word of the moment. With all of this urgency to get AI off the ground, to get AI running, there are managers who are having conversations with teams going, we've got to be AI powered. And they go, what does that even mean? Do you think there is a risk we are running too fast and thinking about how we get AI implemented without thinking about what's valuable? And what does that look like?
Well, I can share an example about our area, learning and development. I think we need to differentiate here between knowledge and between learning. So definitely we can get a lot of outcomes from AI in terms of knowledge, but is that what we are looking for? So this is the big question here. So we shouldn't only rely on that, but how to turn this knowledge into learning. And that comes along with the elements that we discussed today, like bringing it to practice and so on. So yes, AI can contribute, but in my opinion, it cannot be the only source of learning for us.
Can't be the only voice in the room.
I would say, and in the presentation today on learning measurement or data mastery in the morning, that's one of the data points, like 95% of organizations go for AI adoption, but not necessarily they're seeing the value or ROI of AI. I think the biggest problem for that is organization, and I'm thinking while speaking, so organization trust or organization confidence is superbly important. So what I mean by that, in the race for jumping in the AI icon, we are probably forgetting the trust aspect. And when you try to do too many things faster, I know there's an early adopter syndrome, but when you do too many things faster, probably your employees are not getting that value out of it. And once you lose the trust, the upcoming deliverables becomes even more. And that's precisely the reason why you don't necessarily have a value ROI for all the AI adoption. 95% companies think it's not adding value.
Yeah, I think there's a story behind it as well, where I think a company, I think the post office, something like that, where, you know, they felt that they had to adopt AI sooner rather than later, rather than thinking about their business impact and how is it going to affect their overall outcomes. They replaced most of the operators with AI technology in terms of self-sufficient self-service. And I think 6 months down the line, they realized they had to revert back, because the AI bots in the post offices weren't giving them the right responses, the right outcomes, the right the right kind of solutions for instance, I want to send something to Croatia, for instance, and then their packages went all the way to Alaska. So, you know, those problems were occurring often because they did not see the true adoption of what AI could do, but then also being forced because they see other competitors using it. They felt, okay, let's just put it here and let's put it as a containment measure. And I think a lot of companies risk that if they don't understand the true understanding of AI and how are they going to utilize AI in their adoption for their business impact. So I think a lot of companies really need to understand what is the purpose for AI in their company and how are they going to use it to firstly think about the organization, how they're going to better it in regards to their performance, but then also where's the return of investment there? And I think that a lot of companies need to really understand that first and not, you know, force themselves to get into that world of adoption of AI, actually think about it first before they are utilizing it in the right way.
So it's almost what we were talking about earlier when we were saying let's work out what the objective is here. And then the second question is, and how can AI, if it can, help us get there? As opposed to having question, how can AI help us? How quickly can we get it off the ground?
Exactly.
Right, okay.
Yeah, I'm trying to make it short. I bring in the provider perspective again, and I think, and I'm not saying we do this perfectly well by all means, but I think the expectation from the business side can be that you go to the provider and say like, listen, we need a solution that addresses what we're actually like trying to resolve, and that has incredible user experience, that provides value like from the minute we, not from the minute, but like early on as we start using it. Because then it becomes less about AI. And honestly, it's kind of interesting because we're always trying to pull away from that and like use less AI and say like, what's the value? What is the problem you're trying to solve? Is it a vitamin? Is it a painkiller? And then that changes the entire dynamic, and it's less about, hey, we had an investment in AI that didn't work out the way we wanted it, but instead it has become a value-driven conversation that is sometimes a little bit painful because like you come in with the idea of saying, listen, we need a sexy AI solution right now. But these conversations are paying out, and that you can have that expectation towards the vendor you're working with, I think.
I'm just going to quickly scan the audience to check there are no questions. Okay, good. Fine, we are here. So throw them at us if you've got them. We've covered so much today, and it's been great. What do you think is the next big conversation that needs to happen? And I'm aware that's a very broad question, but I'm really interested in your answers.
I think it would be understanding the true importance of learning and development and how we are still going to shape it in an ever-changing industry, and how our roles are still important as it was, say, 10 years ago. How are we just pivoting? I think it's the iteration I'm thinking about in terms of what we've spoken about today, and then obviously thinking about tomorrow in terms of how are we using our skill sets that we already have to the new world of learning, or the new technology, the new trends that are happening. And I think it's just ensuring that we as learning and development professionals maintain our magic, if you will, and doing it in a way that we are, able to embrace the future, because there's going to be so much technology coming up our way from AI to other areas, but actually how do we utilize it in a way that supports us as learning and development professionals, as opposed to in reverse? I think that would be something I'll be looking forward to.
Excellent.
I would say, again, in the learning lens, considering human for behavior signals as opposed to workshop completion, let's put it that way. So yeah, gone are the days of completing an event, service, I tap down. Don't hate me if I'm not saying service bad, but how we are getting the behavioral signals, which you are getting every other day, right? We don't necessarily have to wait for the year end or half yearly 360 peer feedback and all those things, right? You get this huge amount of data with all the tools integrated properly every day, the signals, the escalation quality, the way somebody's empathizing at the end, if they're facing the end client. This is one example. So capturing the behavioral signals of human and stop considering human as a workshop completion from a learning lens.
Well, I can say something very related to this, which is, I think the coming biggest conversation we should have is how to empower humans, how to make them stand and face that internal fear that they have from AI, not only for losing their jobs. We are currently working on a project trying to understand the barriers of our employees towards continuous use or regular use of AI. And of course, like many of them were very expected, like AI might take my role, like I don't trust the results, I don't know how to do prompts and so on. But one of the answers that was repeated several times, and really we had to stop at, is people thinking that the usage of AI is too easy, that they are embarrassed to go and show the outcomes to their managers. They said, we used to do that report in, I don't know, 3-4 hours. Now I can pull it out using Copilot or whatever in, I don't know, like in a few minutes. I feel embarrassed to go and show my boss that I only did this task in a few minutes, So again, we need to understand our people. We need to understand what their barriers are and how to empower them, how to make them look to AI as an opportunity rather than a threat or rather than something to stand away from or take a position from.
I think that's really fascinating. It never occurred to me that one of the psychological blocks around the use of AI tools might be that it's considered cheating.
Exactly.
I think school has a lot to blame for that one. So I'm going a little bit off script here, but I just want to dig into that. What would you say to anyone? Imagine you have your team in front of you. You've got someone there who's going, I don't like using these tools. I'm really resistant to them. I'm really suspicious of anything that is even remotely connected to AI. What would you want that person to know?
I would say this is the future, and whether we like it or not, we have to do it. Again, people of my generation would remember when the internet first came out and how we were, like cautious about using the internet and how can we trust anything that's mentioned there and so on. Then it became a part of our daily practice. Imagine if we still, again, people of my generation, if they still resisted the internet, no, sorry, I don't rely on these emails. Anyone can take my password and go and see all my bank statements and everything. Of course, it wouldn't work. So it is the same for AI now. Whether we like it or not, it's coming. So either we catch the train or we miss it. So, and it's better to catch that train when we are equipped and when we are ready for it.
There's a great quote from Henry Ford, and I think it's something along the lines of, if I'd asked people what they wanted, they would have said faster horses.
Yeah,
exactly.
We've got a question, so can we get a microphone down here, please? Thank you very much. And I'm going to come back to you guys for that one, if that's okay.
Thank you. Just to build on what Shay was saying around, writing a report in a few minutes with Copilot and showing it to your boss straight away. I think one thing that will never go away is for humans, accountability. AI will not be accountable for our actions and the way we're using it. So I'm curious to hear your view on how do you see we should either train or upskill our people to make sure that they are accountable, they are aware of that, and they are making responsible use of AI, which is a human skill they'll need to have.
Yes, so definitely, again, that's a part of the project that we are working on about AI, not only as the technical aspect of training, including prompting and so on, but also the mental and the mental aspect of it and the barriers that is blocking people from using AI. We want them to understand that AI is safe, that AI, yes, it has limitations, but with your critical thinking, you can overcome these limitations. That AI is a tool that, again, back to my point about the cheating part, that you put an effort giving the right instructions and giving the right judgment. So having the task done quickly doesn't mean that you are not doing your best towards it. Again, going back to history, and I'm sorry, I keep going back to it a lot, but look at accountants in the past when they were using all these books and sheets and so on. No one said Excel comes and is cheating because it's making your life easier.
And if I can, a follow-up question, then it's more or less, how do you make sure that human remain a human in front of the tool? I mean, my point was also around how do you make sure that they remain accountable, but they also that there is the whole process around how to handle AI beyond prompting. How do you make sure you've verified information? What tools you have at hand? What resources is your company providing that you are able to make sure that the report that you're saying to your manager actually has been checked? Would you see a set of rules, processes to be in place, to resources to put in place to make sure that, because I'm seeing lots of people actually using AI in our company. We don't have an issue with that for now. I haven't seen that. what I have an issue with right now is actually, well, AI can do my job. So here is your presentation. And I'm basically talking to AI through, a human. So any thoughts on that as well? And, for the whole group?
I was sorry if I can
Please,
react. I think it's about transparency, and it's about being transparent with your work, right? You can, back in the day when you were in school, and obviously it was a test, you would be looking over and cheating, right? And obviously, yeah, it was my work. And really, was that your work? No, I don't think so. But I think it's about being transparent and saying that the company with its ecosystem anyway has obviously put in those areas to really understand what tools they're getting from what reference from different Power BI, for instance, and where they're getting the actual rich data from. But I think it's about being transparent with yourself first. And then also speaking about the fact that you've asked AI to support you with certain elements of maybe making the presentation look better, or some of the data that you weren't able to visualize has been a part of the process. So I think it's about the transparency, and being transparent with yourself first and foremost is then order for you then to use AI in the right way. Because I think, like you say, a lot of people could use AI and saying, well, yeah, I got AI to do the work for me and that's it. And obviously I've done it in 10 seconds. But by being transparent with yourself, actually looking at this work, is this the right output that you want your manager to see? And it's about understanding that first and foremost, in terms of saying that if I'm transparent with myself, I could be transparent with others to say, look, this is the real reason what I've seen. And just understanding that, yes, AI is a driver, but it's not going to be your be all and end all. So it's about having that element of partnering with it as well to make sure that you are getting the right outcomes and doing it in the right efficient way.
Felix and Samir, anything on? I won't call it an ethical, but I think responsible is the word
Yeah.
I'd use. Responsible use of AI.
It's difficult, right? Overall, I would say, talking about personal experience, it's going to be a combination of, again, putting the I think you can have the expectation on the technology. There should be that expectation, and that has to be voiced. It's very important. Obviously, I'm very biased in this regard because I have my specific tool in mind right now. The other thing, what I'm always telling to businesses as well, is there is an element of like having government in place on the business side as well. There's a certain element that we can do. There's always going to be a certain amount of risk that the business carries, and with using solutions like this as well. But what I can say is, like, for us, I've been working with pharmaceutical businesses, with governments, with schools, and for the majority of them, like, there is actual like good intent in like building the right things and like creating, in our case, like video and communication that is benefiting everyone within that space. And then beyond that, like, we can do things like, for instance, on our site, moderation, like before actually a video is being created. So like you prevent something from being put out that shouldn't be said, right? So there are things that we can do as well. But I think it has to continue to be like an open discussion around this, because it's ever evolving at the moment as well, right?
Samir, anything from you?
Yeah, I think I mentioned this in the recent book, no promotion, but yeah, agent learning systems, because people are speaking about, like, gone are the days of prompt. At least in our company, we are speaking about building agents. So if I speak about layer one, that's the basic task automation that we are used in ChatGPT. But what about the end-to-end automation? That's where the agentic AI, if you will, comes in. In the learning lens, I mentioned 3 layers to that. One starts with the truth layer, and that's where I think it's doubling down. Like, when I say truth, of course, you can do AI with all the research, but you get a human in the loop, human on the loop, get a validation, whether it's whatever be the final output, whether it's carrying your signature, because it's your line on the fire, right? Everybody will resonate with you. And again, once trust is lots of stuff. So first is trust layer. Second, I would love to call it as agent layer. And here agent, I mean the AI agents. And the final is the human layer. So any solution from the learning lens, if you're thinking, that's how we should think and operate. But yeah, trust comes first. That's what
Absolutely. And I like that piece of that transparency. We've got a question.
Yes, it was in response to that idea of almost coming as a confession, like this report, actually, it's been done with AI, whether that feeling would be taken away if there was a bit more consistency around training, being used, sort of how we use AI in this organization, so that people feel like, oh, the assumption is that I've used AI for this. It's not a confession, it's an assumption. and that it sort of twists then that feeling of confession to, oh, I should be using it, rather than I'm embarrassed I've used it.
Well, I think this is a normal part of any change process. So, of course, there is the resistance. There is the brain trying to find some reasons for this resistance to change, whether they are real reasons or just our brains make them up. But again, I don't see a point that in stopping us from using AI because we feel that it is cheating. So definitely we need to change that mindset, whether it is a real objection or it is something the mind is coming up with. We need, as L&D managers, as people who build capabilities in our organization, to work on something to change that mindset. What is it, how it should look like, and so on. To be honest, we don't have something like this yet. As I mentioned earlier, we are currently working on a project that is around the whole mindset using AI. That's about being responsible. That's about how to make sure that you use your critical thinking and so on. So it's about the mental side of AI and how we include that as a part of the change management.
And I guess but my thought was really around that idea that I speak to a lot of organizations where I don't think there has been consistent rollout of training in terms of this is how we want you to use AI. And that's part of, that's really not enabling people to feel less threatened or embarrassed about it. But that maybe it's just not being consistently rolled out, as there's still ambiguity about how we're going to settle into an AI policy within an organization.
I think over the past period, most of us were busy forming online learning material and face-to-face learning material and so on the use of AI from the technical point of view, from building agents, from prompting and so on. And we ignored that part of the mental preparation for that change and the mental resistance to that change. So now many companies are starting to realize this. And I think now this should come as a top priority. And also, I will leave it to my colleagues if you would like to comment on
I
that.
think education is definitely key, right? And that's the first and foremost thing. In our company, in order to have a co-pilot license, you have to undergo 3 training modules. And one of it comes with emotional intelligence from that, in terms of actually the purpose of AI. Why are you using AI? And this is the expectation from the governance, from the leadership team, and this is what the expectation is. And for them to understand that, they have to go through these 3 elements of trainings first before they're able to get a license. And I think that's great because firstly, it validates the importance of AI in regards to what it's used for. Secondly, it's about the adoption of it and how you are going to use it in the right way. And thirdly, it's about actually, if you do want to have that AI license for yourself, you then have to earn it. Because I think a lot of us have used and abused it in a way where we're thinking, oh yeah, it's going to answer all our questions and all the equations that we're looking for in life, or even being our therapist, our lawyer, our, author and writer, everything like that, or, complaints, everything like that in terms of what you want to do with your normal life. But I think having education is important because I think if we don't have that, there is a risk of people not using it properly and using it in the wrong way. So I think by every organization, in my opinion, should actually have a governance where compliance perspective, they have to undergo certain trainings to be able to obtain the license.
I think that's a very good point. Anything from Felix, Amir on that?
Well, maybe just to solidify this, because I think we're, there clearly is like a consensus on that. And I always use a bit of a stupid analogy where I say, like, we're not going to throw the license at you and you figure it out yourself. Like we enforce a 5-week onboarding program, which, and one thing that I didn't mention the entire time is like, there's so much pedagogy behind, like, obviously L&D, apart from a creative part and the human part of that. And we really try to instill that. And that obviously also includes is like, how are you actually going to be making use of this? Because you can abuse it, but you can also create just really bad content, for instance. By just purely moving to video doesn't make it like better communication. But that just solidifies, I think, what we said is like there has to be like this strong training, there has to be governance, there has to be education consistently as well. Because otherwise, and this is one of the things that I wrote down, is like one thing that I'm observing is like that you run into two groups. You have like the kind of people that have been augmented by the use of artificial intelligence, right? That have increased their capabilities, that have become more efficient. And then you have like most likely the larger group of people that have been throwing the license at them. And they were like, okay, I just gotta have to use this, but I don't know what to do with it. And I think that is a kind of dangerous.
Yeah, absolutely.
100% agree. As a bad output, just to plus one to that, when that individual is showing it to an external client, they might say, oh, is this what Synthesia is capable of? Probably it's capable of much bigger things. So to answer your question, definitely there needs to be an education, but even before education, awareness. But I think even before we come into the picture, and when I say we, I'm referring to as L&D professionals, I think the change management topic was great. So the leader needs to drive with a certain change management approach. So governance is very important because we suddenly have, with the plethora of tools that we suddenly have too many tools. In our organization, we do believe demos against memos, no longer a 5-pager document. Let's build a tool, show me the demo, show me the proof of concept. But at the end, we just realized we had 50 demos. Chances are 10 of those are tackling the same problem, working in silos. So a governance mechanism definitely works wonders.
We've got time for just one more question from the audience. Yes, there it is. That was useful, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Thank you.
So I'm still finding it a little bit hard to visualize a world where AI doesn't replace human value, or we also hear theories about moving towards a more skill-based economy. So are we looking at a world where we have only influencers and entrepreneurs that are in trade or in communication with tech companies? What would like an ideal AI integrated world look like in 20 or 30 years for you?
Oh,
What a question to finish with. I love it.
Well,
question. Forget.
Can I tell you something? I never imagined a world, like if you asked me 20 years ago, I never imagined a world I would send a message to someone saying Merry Christmas or Happy Eid or something. And I mean, it happens nowadays, right? So at that time, for us to say Merry Christmas or for me to say Happy Eid to someone, I would need to call this person, and you hear the warmth of the voice and so on. And things move this way. Now, yes, we are able to cover more people with one text message or one, but is it really the good thing? I don't know. So back to your question, what will happen then? I think that is beyond imagination for the time being, because things advance so fast. How fast will it advance? Where it will reach? I personally cannot imagine it, because if you ask me, I will not tell you 10 years ago. 2 years ago, will I be using AI every day like I use it now? I would tell you, oh, wow, that seems like magic. Bring me something like that. Within 2 years, we are using it on daily basis. So I don't know, maybe one of my colleagues would have a better answer than this.
No way. What I know 20 years down the line is, yeah, I don't want to be here. I want to be in some beach in Spain enjoying vacation. But definitely, I hope we still have a conference like this, and these are all humans. To answer your question, there needs to be an integration. Right now, I think the biggest gap, and I'm like doubling down on that, organization trust and organization technology. If you take these two T's, trust and technology, I think technology is moving fast and employees are losing organizational trust. And in between the gap is human skills. That's where it exists. So I think it needs to be co-pilot. There's no harm in we being a 5x, 10x version of ourselves. I hated those days of 10 years back when a presentation to my director used to take me 3 days and nights. It's much easier. I really want to do that. Rather, I spend my time and energy in consulting strategy. So let's be a 5, 10, 20x better version.
You feel you're cheating, no?
No, I'm not cheating, because chances are when I'm cheating, somebody of you are cheating my work also because it's in the public place.
I think if I was to be selfish, first and foremost, if you guys remember the film I, Robot, you know, where that was the personal assistant, that would be my 20 years. Fantastic. You know, that, you know, I
Great
have staff that I don't have to pay them, they're AI operated. But I think in the world of the corporate, I think it's a driver for our front level staff to then start thinking about their development. Because in my organization at the moment, we're thinking about, okay, AI is coming in rapidly. We are getting more coordination done by AI through Copilot and through the AI bots and stuff. And we're thinking about, okay, the actual coordinators in the role now, they've had to be the basis of our organization to ensure that training adoption in terms of obviously the booking of the courses or what have you. But then the plan that we're thinking about is actually how do we elevate those individuals to start thinking more executively, actually think about strategy, understanding actually your role can be developed here because we have a basis now through AI. What can we do to really elevate your career to develop you? And I think sometimes with the lack of forward thinking, I think we then get scared, the fear of the unknown, right? Thinking, oh my gosh, my role's going to be obsolete, I'm going to be redundant. But actually, how are we taking that positively and thinking how we can upskill our workforce in a way that they are taking it in with a positive spin on it, that they are actually able to actually look at their career development. So we've got coordinators who would do the normal booking of trainings, but now we're thinking about them doing strategy, how to facilitate, how to be trainers, because they would love to get to that role. But from an organizational perspective, the cost effect doesn't really have, we haven't got the budget. But now we have AI, we're now thinking in that adoption way where we're thinking about, okay, yes, let's get them to be more facilitators training. So I think in the next 20 years, I think it's about actually the next level, because the human mind will always be the top. And it's actually how do we adopt that and utilize AI in a way that the human brain works first, and then we get the AI integration from there. So it's about how do we prompt AI to really work for us in the best way.
I can't wait for my robot butler. Phoenix, anything from you?
I mean, I can just second everything you guys just said, but maybe to give this a different spiritual or maybe naive kind of twist as well. I don't know what's going to be happening in 20 years, and I wouldn't even go as far as like making a prediction. But what I'm genuinely trying to do by being, for instance, part of Synthesia is like having a personal impact and ensuring that the communications that I have with whoever, you know, has an interest. And obviously we work in an AI business. We use AI ourselves as well. We're trying to like teach the right things. And I think if everyone in this room starts doing that, like leaving the room again, we talked like earlier today in a panel discussion, like on Monday morning, right? Like coming back and saying like, hey, I'm going to try to use the technology to the best potential. Like, and I'm going to try to, you know, teach others like to use this in the best possible way. I think then we're up for a good future, actually, because it's just going to be developing in a good direction. And if that's going to be like the major kind of wave, then, you know, I'm kind of looking forward to it, to be honest.
The future's bright. I think that's probably the place to leave it on. Thank you so much, panelists, and thank you so much, audience. Peter, I'll hand back to you.
Let's give a round of applause first. Yeah, thank you.